Welcome to Ignite Your Business radio show. Light the match, throw some gasoline on, and buckle up because we're about to take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Josh Wilhelm. You might be asking yourself, who is this Josh guy? What gives him the right to talk with all of these successful business owners? Well, I'm the founder of a design and marketing agency in Southern California for the last 23 years. I get fired up when I talk with small and medium-sized business owners about their journey. So let's get right to it. Here we are, 6 days into the new year and kicking off 2021 with season 2 of Ignite Your Business radio show with episode 29. We told you all we have are just amazing things coming into the new year. And as we're wrapping up 2020, we told you that we were going to be doing some very interesting things. I know I can't be the only one who thought we'd be done talking about COVID by now. However, here we are. With more than 200,000 reported cases putting overwhelming strain on our healthcare system nationwide, some predict that we may need as long as the eternity of 2021 to vanquish the coronavirus. In fact, some officials claim that the effects of the newly unveiled COVID vaccines won't truly be felt until the third quarter of 2021, with society returning to normal, meaning unmasked, near this time a year from now. As grim as these numbers may seem, on the positive side of this pandemic, we've seen many companies rise up and take on the challenge of protecting and safeguarding citizens across the U.S. and even globally from the deadly virus. Modern-day companies seem to have revived the World War II U.S. manufacturing and innovative spirit. From distilleries producing hand sanitizers to apparel companies making face masks to keep us all safe and protected against an unrelenting and invisible to the human eye advisory. One such company is LMI Textiles, an organization that has placed all of its collective elbow grease into the perfection and distribution of personal protective equipment. Today's guest is involved firsthand in ensuring that our first responders and frontline workers are well protected. The Ignite Your Business radio show is proud to welcome the founder and CEO of LMI Textiles, Legrand Lindor. Legrand, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Josh. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, the pleasure's all ours, as they might say. So first, let's start off by having you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. So my name is Legrand Lindor, born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts, and just always had this entrepreneurial spirit. Went to undergrad in D.C. After that, did some graduate school work in Connecticut, and then came back to Boston to start my career. But along the way, have many entrepreneurial ventures, even as a kid, just doing little things here and there and trying to make a little extra money and, satisfy those juices.
I appreciate you sharing that. And speaking of kids, I don't know, and I kind of talked to my own kids about this, and I threw out this suggestion at the dinner table last night. I said, have any of you thought about going into the textile industry? Mm-hmm. And certainly the answer was, what is the textile industry? So on that note, I'm sure that you did not start off in elementary school telling your teachers, hey, you know what? When I grow up, I'm going into the textile industry, so you better watch out. Right. With all joking aside on that, I can't imagine, how did you go into this industry that you're in now?
Sure. So it really started when I was in law school. I'd never thought I'd be in the t-shirt business or garments or anything like that, as you're mentioning. And, a friend of mine, my parents are from Haiti. And so one thing about it is, I want to wear something, that shows where I'm from, being proud to be Haitian, things of that nature. I couldn't really find anything of quality that I would want to wear for myself. Some of these other countries I saw that they have, sponsorships from, the high-end brands, that we all know. I couldn't find anything for Haiti. And so I, kind of got the juices flowing, and I said, got to make it myself. And so one thing led to another while in law school. through various connections, people having connections to factories abroad, had a sample, made it. And then from there, we started making T-shirts on the domestic side, but using factories abroad to make the high end stuff like whether the jackets and such. And so started there with Haiti, and a couple other countries where my other friends were from, Barbados, Trinidad, and in Jamaica, to make some jackets and T-shirts as well. And from there, just kind of it's been always like a side business as I was doing my career as in the legal world, business world. And but every single time I thought to myself it would go away, it kept bringing me back in, some form or fashion. So it's been a nice ride.
Yeah, and you talk about your career previous to this in the legal world, and no pun intended, but it seems a bit of a stretch going from the legal world into then the textile industry and fashion. But it certainly makes sense with your explanation of kind of going from,
and all around the world. So, and it's about, things like media being able to bring you in on everything in terms of letting you know what's going on, but it's not everything. There's always more to do. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, and getting to know you, I'm sure this will be the case, but I encourage you to continue on the talks around your kids about your history, your family history, so that it continues on down the path. For myself, my great-grandparents moved here from Ireland. So, it seems like over the years, the further and further you get away from the initial generation that came over, the stories get lost along the way or get watered down or just not communicated as much. And so just naturally over time gets forgotten, which is sad. But and it's great to hear that you're so closely connected to that generation, being your parents that came over, that doesn't get that much closer other than being that generation that came over themselves, so that's a tremendously positive story. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
All right. Well, we just struck the match on our conversation with Legrand Lindor from LMI Textiles. When we come back from this short commercial break, we're going to throw some gasoline on our conversation and get into Legrand's marketing secrets. We'll be back after this quick message from our sponsor. Welcome back to Ignite Your Business Radio Show. I'm your host, Josh Wilhelm. We're back with Legrand Lindor, founder and CEO extraordinaire of LMI Textiles. So everyone has a different method of marketing their products to potential users, and we don't imagine LMI is really any different in that respect. However, your company boasts a tremendous amount of leads through word of mouth. I know our listeners are very interested and are dying to hear how to get that type of organic, not to mention free advertising. So, Legrand, what action steps would you recommend when it comes to word of mouth referrals and establishing those relationships with those trusted either clients or coworkers, in a sense, where there are other vendors that you're working that boast and talk about you very highly? How would you recommend our listeners take advantage and really increase that word of mouth marketing and referral for their own business?
Well, I think it all comes from, like you said, trust from your clients. And the initial stages for our company, especially in the PPE side, is, having conversations with people as much as possible. Everyone's time is short. So you got to be able to, give that pitch in that 30 seconds or less that allows the customer or potential customer to be engaged. And so from there, it just becomes, a trust factor of delivering, to what they need. And being highly communicative. I think in all businesses in general, having good communication is key, because we know there's certain things, acts of God that we can't, displace, whether it's you're
Right.
in the logistics business, and the boat didn't leave on time, or, there's a technical difficulty, things of that nature. So I think, having that in the back of your mind makes you understand that, having that trust with the clients, and then getting those clients to then refer you to other people, because everyone's always looking for something easy. Most of the time, the product that you're providing to a client is not their core business, right? So they want to be doing something else. And so you're trying to be a partner with them to make it easy for them so that they can do other things. And so that's what we try to do on our side, letting our clients know what's going on, even when we see things coming ahead, let them know, this is coming up, there might be a delay here or a shortage here because of this, raw material, whatever it is.
Right.
And generally it's going to be the same for any of our competitors too. So, they're not going to jump ship just because of that. So as long as you're able to give them some forewarning, it's definitely a good thing, and they appreciate that, and they refer on to other people, and we've had great success with that, as you mentioned, in terms of one of our clients, a few of our clients being able to say, we'll give you a reference from whoever you need, big hospitals, small hospitals, nursing homes, whatever it is, because you definitely saved us or helped us a tremendous amount during this time, especially for the PPE side of our business.
That's an excellent point. When you're talking about an interesting one at that you're referencing that the way you've gone about building that trust, and we oftentimes for our business we reference it as a trust factor. There's multiple forms of it, even things like you see on websites where as seen on TV or as seen on this network or that kind of thing. What I want to pull out of that I find fascinating in your response is that the way in which you're saying that, hey, we built our trust on the back of constant flow of communication with our clients. That's how we've built those spokespeople, if you will, the spokesmen and women out there that are going and shouting your name from the rooftop in a positive way. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen this time and time again with various industries that the fear behind communicating regularly with clients, there's a few different reasons, but one of the biggest ones that I constantly see is that there's a fear of communication with clients because of being afraid of how they're going to react, especially when it's bad news. Good news is easy. That's easy to communicate good news. Hey, we over delivered, kind of type thing. We went 150% above and beyond. That's easy to communicate those things. It's when things are not going in anyone's plan of attack, but that's when it's most crucial to communicate. That is, out of everything else, the most important time to communicate, because put yourself in the client's shoes for a second. If they're really expecting that product or they're expecting it at a certain time, you don't know what they're planning around that. You don't know if they're planning on going on vacation. You have no idea. So when you don't tell them things, it actually festers potentially to a much bigger issue than if you had been upfront and honest with them. So tremendously great insight on that, because I think a lot of people just assume that, well, if you do a good job, that's how you build up the trust. That's how you build up the clients that are happy with you. But I appreciate you taking a step further and say, hey, yeah, that's all good and everything. Building a good, solid reputation for yourself is great. But what really has stirred that up and sparked that is the constant flow of communication, even when things aren't going as planned.
Right, exactly. And like you mentioned, the contingencies that they may have that they could help out. We've had that happen. Oh, this happened. Okay, we can get from this supplier, to hold us over. Or do you have a similar product that we can hold over in the meantime? We had this happened, a few weeks ago with masks, and so communication key. Let our minds work. That's what we're here for.
Sure.
We're here to solve problems. That's another thing, part of our company. We're here to solve problems and communicate with the clients. Number one.
Yep. Well, and I think the problem solving ability and really characteristic is that of any entrepreneur. We are
Right.
problem solvers just by nature. That's what we do. That's why we start a
Right.
business, because we're
Right.
solving a problem. Either
Right.
it's the lack of anyone doing it, or it's who's currently doing it is not doing a very good job. We're problem
Right.
solvers at heart.
Right.
So you carrying that on and working actually then with your clients to say, hey, I realize this problem is not just ours, of course, it's yours as well, but we're also not going to just dump it on you, go, well, just want to let you know you're going to be late. So sorry, it is what it is. But you take it a
Right.
step further and say, hey, it's going to be late, but I want to see what I can do to help you out. And I've already gone ahead and pulled some resources together to give you some options. Now it softens the blow for, oh, okay, I'm not just stuck in a rock and a hard place. You actually have already come to me with some solutions right out the gate. So
Right.
that's
Yeah.
important. All right, so
Absolutely.
these type of recommendations, that being that of word of mouth, must be the product of, and we, as we've talked about, the high level client relationship building strategy that you have. How does your company prioritize the building of these partnerships with your clients and even your vendors, for that matter, as well? That, of those that trust you in your business, how do you prioritize that and putting it at the front of utmost importance?
Yeah, it's really is the utmost importance. Obviously the product that you're selling is key, but having that communication and allowing them, building that relationship. People love working with people that they like, especially in these times when we may not see each other face to face, or if we are now with Zoom and things of that nature, video calls. It's great, but having that communication. And so what we do really is try to help educate too, because I think in this flux of what we're working with in PPE, there are a lot of unknowns that procurement officers and teams were really just pointing and clicking and buying. They weren't going through the whole process of maybe not understanding the deepness of the products, in terms of test reports, things of that nature. But because of this pandemic, they had to really get down and dirty with the materials. And so on our side, that's one thing we've been well versed, because our company has been handling PPE for
Sure.
over 7 years. We were doing more of the industrial PPE, but we were doing fire resistant safety vests, which obviously is highly technical. We're manufacturing these things from scratch. We're procuring all of the raw materials from all around the world. And so we have to make sure each of those components are fire resistant, because obviously there's a big liability issue
Yeah.
if someone's working in the oil and gas industry and they're wearing one of our products and it doesn't meet the specs and something happens on a personal injury type of thing. So with that knowledge, we were able to, translate that on the medical side as well. And really, we've gone through vetting factories that we haven't used before, but we're using now, to understand their reports, and making sure we having, trusted vendors like you mentioned too,
Sure.
abroad, that are, looking at the products for us, just kind of vetting everything out. And I think the education piece of it for us in talking to our clients is so key, in making sure that that trust factor is there, that marketing aspect of it, where the relationship becomes an easier flow. We have conversations. We try to have an open book with our clients, saying, feel free to call me anytime, literally
Sure.
anytime. And we get calls on the weekends, holidays, whatever it may be, because that's the line of business we're in. It's an emergency type of situation, even though it might not be needed to be delivered that day, but we have to get the things in process. So, communication, I'll stress it millions of times in
Yep.
this conversation, but trust, and being that person to, educate at the same time, because again, the core business of most of these, our clients, aren't, the actual products we're
Right.
selling to them. So we want to make sure that they're in line with what we know as much as possible, as much as they want to know. We can go always deeper and deeper with them. But it's fun. And again, problem solving as an entrepreneur, and,
Yep.
and learning. It's great. I love it.
You mentioned, and it kind of made me chuckle a little bit, is that I'm sure with your previous background as an attorney, when you were talking about the liability part, it instantly hit me was, if there were anyone that is more concerned of and staying up late at night, losing sleep, is the fear of liability issues as a previous attorney, more than anybody else normally would, because you've been previously trained to look at things from a legal standpoint. And you know from your history as being an attorney, the legal ramifications and how it can completely destroy a company if it's not handled correctly. So anyone that would seriously put an extra level of quality control on anything you touch, I would imagine would be you, of course.
Absolutely. Don't
Yeah,
want no part of it. No part of lawsuits.
exactly. Yeah, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, but you still
Right.
want to diminish the liability that you have with it and do
Yeah.
everything you can. It's not, I've learned in the business world and over the years, there's nothing that will 100% prevent you from being sued. But
Right.
you can do plenty of extra steps to help prevent it. It's kind of like the getting audited by the IRS.
Right.
It's you
Right.
can't do anything to prevent it
Right.
completely,
Yeah.
but you can
Yeah.
do extra steps to really mitigate
Right.
the chances of it. I
Yeah.
wanted to touch on one of the points that we're talking about communication here, and you did it again. You brought up an excellent point that I think needs to be called out, and that is, it's not just about sharing the communication of problems and then, as you mentioned, solving those problems, but it's also too, as you said, the education process. We're all very busy, and as you pointed out, especially in your particular new field or fairly new field of dealing with the PPP products, is there's a lot of unknown, a lot of uncertainty. It's kind of the wild, wild west, if you will, for companies that are supplying quality as well as not so good quality products out there. And so, with everyone scrambling to have to conform to either state, federal, whatever it is, rules and regulations around how to protect people, there's a mad dash just to purchase whatever you can. I mean, we've seen it in the news where there's governors even that got caught up in a scam that was overseas purchases because they were just scrambling to purchase things. But I want to highlight and touch upon the education process because, I think that also goes well to the trust, because you're taking the time that probably other vendors in your world are not. They're just like, hey, you want to take an order? It's kind of like the stock market down on the floor. It's like, hey, you
Right.
want to buy? We'll buy. You want to sell?
Right.
We'll sell.
Right.
That kind of thing. Instead of taking the time to go, wait, why do you need to buy? Why do you think you need to buy? Then let me help you kind of gear you and line you up in the right direction of really what you need based on your needs, not just getting caught up in the frenzy of we need masks or we need hand
Right.
sanitizer or we need all this type of stuff. Why do you in particular need that? Because then that further builds the trust with your clients so that they're going to come back or anyone else they come in contact to say, look, you got to go work with this guy. I mean, they know what they're doing. And
Right.
we call it on our side, because of dealing with the website world, we reference it as a trusted web mechanic. That it's that mechanic trust that you have. When you go to the mechanic and that one that says, you don't need new brakes right now. What are you talking about? Just save your
Right.
money. I'll let you know when you need the brakes, but you don't need them now. Hold on to your funds.
Right.
You're like, wait, there's a mechanic that's not asking for every penny in my wallet right now? What is going on here? What other reality am I living in? But instantly that builds the trust with that customer and that mechanic. So you're doing the same thing. You're building that PPP trusted mechanic relationship with your clients.
Yeah, and that's a good point. In fact, because of the pandemic, a lot of people rushed into this business as well, right? So not only were people coming in that weren't in the business at all of selling PPE or producing or manufacturing it, so they come in and it's like the Wild West. It's like the new industrial revolution, right?
Right.
Of this era. So it's the fact that people were out of work, so it provided opportunities for people
Yep.
to make money, for their families, as anyone would want to do. But some people got got head over their heels, whatever the
Yeah.
terminology is,
Way over their
and
head. Yeah.
way over their head, and it was something that I would see, where we helped quote unquote save a couple of other clients,
Yeah.
suppliers, that were sending things to their clients, let's say in Georgia. And when that client got that product from another vendor, they were like, we can't use this. And I
Yeah.
said, take a look at my sample, we'll send it over, we'll give you a good price, so that you can be situated, and because we're in it for the long term as well, not just being like a fly by night kind of operation. We've been
Absolutely.
doing it from before and, continuing to do it. And we have a vision for different steps of the iteration of the business to make sure that it's a long-standing type of business for the fact that, we have our own suppliers or vendors and manufacturers in globally, but also that we have our own facilities as well, which makes it, a game changer for us.
Mm.
And this is where we're able to come in lower in pricing than some of these national suppliers that have large economies of scale that blow us out the water, but our pricing that we know is better than theirs. So it's been a nice, case study, let's say,
Yes.
brings me back to business school. And that's why I love it, in terms of that's what we're doing here. We're helping people solving problems, but it's a nice mental exercise as well, which all entrepreneurs, I think, love in the background. Of course, we all want to make money, but we want to get things done the right way,
Yeah.
help other people. And so that, you just feel comfortable. And especially with the world we're living in now, it's not an easy place. And so however we can, allay people's fears or, relax them so they can enjoy their weekend with their
Yeah.
families, whatever it may be, that's the name of our game and how we want to approach it. And I think we're doing it the right way. And it's been fun doing it.
That's awesome. Let's go back to a little bit of the more traditional marketing. Let's talk about that for a
Sure.
second. But
Sure.
there's plenty of us business owners that where we've tried particular marketing strategy that ended up being a failure for the record books, as they might
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Certainly, we all learn as business owners from those experiences. If we don't, we're
Right.
silly not to, because we really need to learn from every good and bad situation that we go through. But I'm curious, could you share with us what maybe one or a couple of those marketing strategies were that you learned from in that way? It was, you tried it, you thought it was maybe in the beginning a great way to go about it, and it ended up being an epic failure. But, what was it? And then what did you learn from that experience?
Sure. So in other businesses, especially with the advent of the internet and emails, people, and let's say it might be the easier way to go about it, just,
Mm,
sending an email over,
sure.
trying to see if you can get a catch or so. So understanding that, and as I was building our team in the beginning of this pandemic to really spread our tentacles as far as possible, we were like, we have to hammer the phones. There's so many people, getting emails and being bombarded that way. They're already busy during the day. It's a pandemic. People are just really scrambling,
Yeah.
and having that team that can really educate on a quick basis, to the clients or potential clients who've never heard about them. So we did a lot of cold calling, honestly, in the
Mm,
beginning, to these facilities, and we've gotten some great catches from that. And so as time goes on for us, it's like, okay, we've done that in the beginning. We've built a good base of people, got good contact information, creating our database for like email, for future, marketing type of activities. But I think with marketing, as an entrepreneur, as a business, you have to hit it from many different angles,
sure.
because I might like white rice. Another person wants brown rice. They want peas in their soup. They want ketchup. I want mustard. Everyone is an individual, so they all want something different. So it's about being able to be flexible and nimble to market in various ways,
Mm,
to clients or potential clients, because there's no one right way to do it. I
sure.
think there's always a right scheme or a right plan, that talks about hits different angles, for different clients, because again, everyone's unique, in terms of how they want to receive information, whether visually, audio,
Yeah.
or, some other way. carrier pigeon.
And so what I'm pulling from that is that you're saying diversify your marketing strategies, not any one, even if it's the same industry, same way people have been advertising for years and years and years. And we've definitely have seen that from the pandemic with COVID, that it has forced people, businesses, certainly to be creative in a lot of ways. Restaurants are having to put their seating outside versus inside, and having to pick up and do overnight practically pickup and deliveries that were restaurants that never even fathomed or for years said, no, that's not our thing. That's a pizza delivery service, that not a
Right.
high-end restaurant. Now they're all of a
Right.
sudden having DoorDash show up for drivers picking up food and delivering it.
Right.
All right, so let me circle back on this, because I
Sure.
want you kind of gave me a very lawyer response, a very hey, yeah, there's a lot of things that you got to try, but I want to hear about at least one thing that you can remember, and it could have been very early days of your business that you said, okay, we got to start somewhere. Let's try this for marketing. And it was one of those, just for whatever reason, and it may not even be something that why it failed. It just failed. And it was one of those epic failures. What was that? Dig deep into the brain, bypass the lawyer response to it for a second, and hit us with what you tried and just didn't work.
Sure. So in the beginning of the business, that, in terms of the apparel side of the retail stuff that we were doing in the beginning, making flyers and, being younger and seeing how people would do flyers for whether it's clubs, things of that nature, putting on the cars, that sort of thing, for the apparel side, that didn't work for us.
Sure.
We would print like thousands of these things, and we would go to different events, whether it's, based on, the demographic we're trying to target.
Yeah.
But, we could see that the website wasn't getting hits, because of that. So, that was like for us, for my type of business, this type of business in terms of apparel, it was like, no, you're not that type of business where you get that attraction. And that's when I began to realize too, when people are buying apparel, it's like you're looking to feel and touch the items that you're going for. Like the jackets that we made for Haiti, visually it looks nice, but then when you see that the flag is all embroidered, it takes it to the next level.
Sure.
To justify the high end price or the price that we're trying to get for it. And so, that's when we changed it up in that regard by having like, when we would have events, we would have a table there at the event so people can touch and feel the garments. We're not trying to sell the whole table out. We're here to, show you and then give you the card so you can know where to purchase online from or go to a store if there are stores carrying our items. So, so that would be the bad one in for us, or lesson learned. That's another thing too. I think in business, it's all about seeing what works, and so that didn't work for this part of the business, but it works for others, so that was ours.
And see, you couldn't help yourself. The lawyer stepped in at that last minute and said, well, it didn't work for us, but it can work for others, because the liability fear stepped in and said, well, I just want to say, just to add the little asterisk after that.
That guy said to do that, so you're right.
And also what I find interesting with that is the correlation between, you mentioned specifically about the touch, the feel, which makes complete sense. You're dropping off a flyer, they see a picture of it potentially, but it doesn't really communicate the quality, of course. There's nothing you can really do in a photo. You can do the best photography possible, but it's going to be really hard unless you have like almost the equivalent of a scratch and sniff sticker where you've got like a little fuzzy part that they can rub and go, this is the quality of the material that you're going to get.
That's a good one. I like
there
that
you go.
one right there,
There you
Josh.
go. It's just, hey, see that your lawyer instincts kicked right in again and say, hey, there you go. There's another opportunity right there.
Yeah.
But I also picked up on the fact that with what you're saying is lends to the side also of just putting flyers and things on cars at clubs, whatever. That probably with you going through that, realizing, okay, this isn't working for us. was probably the start, the baby step in realizing that a relationship with your clients is a crucial aspect of building that brand. You have to build a relationship with them. They don't know you from Adam.
Right.
They just come across a flyer like, who's this?
Right.
Yes, there might be something that catches their attention, but they don't have any brand loyalty to you yet.
Right.
So you have to build the relationship first before you start knocking off all the cars with, your flyers and stuff and business cards,
Right.
because you're one apparel company to another. They don't know you from anywhere. But interesting. Right. I appreciate you answering that, because I was looking to see if there was any correlation between where you are today to one of those first kind of failures that didn't work for you, but it then set you on the path of where you are today. And sure enough, it sounds like it did. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm sure there's like thousands more, right? That
Sure.
don't come to mind. But we learn as entrepreneurs, on a daily basis, what works. And we're not even, it's good to have these like conversations too, really, to like think back, so that we don't repeat mistakes, or so that we can, be cognizant of what's going on, to then we can change this part of the lever and add this to it, add some spice. So things of that nature. I think it's very important to try to keep track of what you're doing as a business, so that you can not repeat failures or understand how maybe you can tweak something later on to make it actually work when maybe it didn't before.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we need to push pause on our conversation, Legrand. When we come back from this short commercial break, we're going to turn up the heat on our conversation, get some business and operations talk going. So we'll be back right after this quick commercial break. And we're back with Legrand Lindor, founder and CEO of LMI Textiles. So, Legrand, let's shift over to the business and operations side of your organization for a bit. But one consistent challenge we know and continually hear about when it comes to manufacturing is quality control. So, how do you ensure that quality control for LMI Textiles?
So, our vendors. So on vendors that we use to manufacture our items outside, great trust, great relationships over many years. We've had a couple of like iterations of our production lines where, just even a couple of items were not up to its snuff, let's say literally like a handful out of like 50,000. And our vendors would tell us, oh, we owe you, 10 gowns because, it wasn't made to the right standard. So having that trust and having that team, the QC managers at the factory that are there watching production, there's a whole QC process for us, after things are being cut, sewed, and, placed together, that, the team is going through, looking at the thread, making sure, loose ends are cut up and cut out and things of that nature. And so this is where the vetting process is as well, right? It's not just what the finished product that they're giving you, but seeing what their product, their process are, their operations are, similar to how we have in our own facilities in Haiti, doing the same thing. Because again, that just, you don't want a client to open up a box of things that just aren't, what they need, or it's falling apart. And, for what we've done, we've done a great job with that. And so it's about having the manufacturing operations of the production process, the quality control, and going through each item like one by one. There's no like automatic just stamp of approval. No, it's like each product has to go through another production line of like quality control team. Sure. To make sure that the product that we're packaging up and sending it off, to the client directly, does not, that it meets up to what they're expecting.
Understood. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I think it's interesting to point out that you talk about earlier in the prior segment, we were discussing about the trust and the communication. Certainly, that when things are going wrong, is really important to communicate. Even more so at that point. To also hear too that it's not just the level of quality that you bring to your clients, but it's also the support that you have behind you that equally
Oh,
has that same level of quality control to say, look, and that example that you gave with sending you 10 gowns because a couple of them were messed up is, that takes a lot for someone to say, hey, you might not have even noticed it, but
right,
we
right.
we noticed it, and we have a
Yeah,
level that we standards that we are expecting of ourselves to meet, and if we don't meet those, we're
right.
going to do what we need to do to correct the wrong. That takes tremendous amount of strength and foundation as a company to come at any situation like that, and is really, at the end of the day, that's integrity. That's
Yeah.
someone that steps up because even though they don't technically need to, probably, but they choose to. That's where integrity steps in. So many businesses look to outsource manufacturing, as we've known. I mean, it's become even more prevalent and even more accepted. It used to be, even a few years back, probably 5, 10 years ago, frowned upon, maybe, that, oh, you outsource, oh, quality is terrible, that kind of thing. But it's come a long way, certainly, in the outsourcing arena, and especially in the manufacturing world. Um, but I'm curious, yes, it's looked at for oftentimes lowering overhead, cost of goods, materials, things of that nature. But what's the main reason for you and LMI Textiles to pursue this route?
Sure. So in terms of us going with additional vendors
Hmm.
to supply our items, you just can't do everything yourself. You have to have, especially if you want to give different products. In the manufacturing world, a factory generally handles one type of item, then the next factory handles the other type of item. Especially in the PPE world we're supplying hospitals with gowns, masks, face shields, syringes now, and needles,
Sure.
for the vaccine. That one factory can't do it,
Yep.
alone. Maintain your focus, and that way you maintain excellence,
Sure.
in that way. So in our factory in Haiti, we do gowns, there, medical scrubs, things of that nature. Things are more that are easier cut and sew type of aspect. And even if we wanted to do more and create a production line for face shields or something, we could, but then there's also that capital cost,
Mm,
to get the proper
yep.
machinery, training, all those sort of things that become an issue. Not an issue, but makes it a little bit harder. So why do that when there's other people that are able to do that, and we can work together, and which we have and which we do, which is great. So this is why we, use, different vendors at the same time, also being diversified, using different countries as well,
Sure.
in terms of international business, as we're understanding, or people are more understanding now in this
Yeah.
during this pandemic. It's, you get a bottleneck from one country, or coming from one country, might have a problem when, whether it's tariffs, trade
Yep.
wars, things of that nature. But then having, different countries, and we have about 4 or 5 different countries around the globe, in different regions, which allow us to really hit those marks for us on the financial side, so that we can give our clients obviously the best product possible, but
Sure.
also the best price possible as well. Like I said, we're getting, giving great pricing to our clients that, maybe they haven't seen before, and they're wondering how we're doing it. At the same time, we're doing the quality. And so these are the background things that you're talking about, like the
Yep.
back room, penny counting, where, seeing where, how we can help ourselves, and, operationally keep our costs low, so that we can, pass it on to our clients, especially with these, people weren't expecting anything like
Right.
this going on. So their budgets are out the water of things like PPE that they were maybe spending, $1 million, for easy purpose. And now they're spending like, 10 times that,
Sure.
and where are they getting it from? So however we can help as much as possible, we can. And I think that's been good for us to, gain traction with referrals that we've mentioned before
Mm-hmm.
in terms of clients. And so doing the best we can.
I love your answer on this because it goes right in line with how we as an agency, you're talking about it from a product side. You have a product, obviously, that you deal with, a physical item that you're shipping and sending. For us, because our business is service related and being a marketing agency, we feel the same way with talent because our commodity is not that of physical product, it's that of time, people, resources in that form. And we've always believed the same thing, which is, it's you're at a disadvantage really if all you can see is within a certain mile radius of your location or your customer or client for that matter. If you can't tap into seeing that the world has, I mean, the people on our team arguably are better talent and better at their job than someone that we can find within a 25-mile radius that's willing to drive to our offices. So why are we going to limit not only for us, but more importantly for our clients and the work that and quality that we put out and do a disadvantage to them by saying, well, we only hire within a certain mile radius that can drive into an office. I joke with people, we were COVID ready before COVID was ever a thing. We work remote, we work globally, and we have done so pretty much from day one. So with that, we've got people and team members around the world that we work with them just as if they worked in the office right next to us. So you're doing, I think business owners, like you said too, is the pandemic has definitely opened people's eyes to this. It's forced them to have to kind of come around for those that were lagging a little bit in this area. But, I want to tell people, whether it be product or service, don't take this as a bad thing just because you had a bad experience one time, or you call a customer service and you can't understand them because the person's all the way around the world and you're frustrated. It's like, don't let that be the only thing that you base your thought process off of with outsourcing, whether it be product or people. So excellent point that you make with that, and I appreciate you sharing that. As a CEO and a business owner, how are you able to personally juggle the different time zones? You talked about, Haiti. You talked about, I mean, sources around the world, not just, Haiti, not just here in the U.S. You've got time zones, of course, here in the U.S. with four technically time zones. But how do you possibly juggle all of those time zones in which you're needing to work and communicate, talk with clients, talk with vendors, talk with teams? How do you do that with all those locations around the globe?
I get asked that question often, and sometimes, most of the time, my answer is I don't know. But it's the energy for me. I enjoy talking with people from different places, honestly. And whether if I'm talking with people in China or Vietnam, and they're 12 hours difference, I call it my second shift, and it's like 9 o'clock p.m. here, it's 9 a.m. there. So it's
Sure.
like, okay, I'm ready to rock and roll. So I'll do that through 1 o'clock in the morning over here, 3 o'clock or so. I'm a night owl too. So and especially when the juices get flowing, and so just the energy is there. Whether it's 6 hours or 7 hours talking to Turkey or somewhere else too, and so it's about solving the problems and having the right team to efficiently get things done.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not spending useless time on the phone.
Sure.
With them, and useless. And I don't mean just like we might just have regular conversations, but those are useful times because you're building relationships to learn about each other as well. And so it's just really about getting out there and just having that energy. And over time, less can be having to be done live. One might be an email overnight that I'll see in the morning, and then they'll be up at 9 o'clock at night
Sure.
their time, answering my email in the morning, and so everyone's trying to do their thing, and that it's great being in this business because on the other side, whether it's vendors, suppliers that I have, whether it's from raw materials and such, they're entrepreneurs too.
Yeah.
And so when you see their excitement, and especially over the months and years that we've been together, it's like your family, just like, we spend so much time working aside from our away from our homes, maybe not anymore because of remote work.
Sure.
But it's just one of those things, and just kind of falls into the right place sometimes when, right place, right time, and right people. But that's how we do it in terms of different time zones, just really doing as much as we can, spreading ourselves, and just talking as much as we can, and just being more efficient over time too.
So kind of along the same lines, picking up on the fact that you've got the different time zones, you're spread out. Certainly COVID's playing a factor, but even if COVID wasn't playing a role currently, your business certainly being spread all throughout the world. You have distance between each other. And certainly, as you've mentioned multiple times, that communication is a huge factor in it. What have you found to be effective in your communication with specifically your team? Like, what tips and tricks have you found that work really well to have that truly effective communication? Because as you answered in the previous question, was having to do with time management is certainly a factor. But then what are some other tips too for maybe having that ultimately effective communication, not just with your clients, but more specifically with your actual team?
I think, whether it's like, deeply internal with like, LMI, it's our LMI team, it's like understanding who's on your team and the different roles that they know how to play or can learn to play, and being effective in that way. Again, like we talked about, some people are audio learners, some of them are visual learners. So it just really is a matter of how, we can make everyone comfortable, but also, trying to do more as well. So same thing on our vendor side and team wise, knowing what their core competency is, and I think that's where, through conversation, you understand and learn about each other. You might ask one question, but that is answering maybe four different things for me as I'm listening to you and watching you, answer that question, that I won't even bother asking later on, because I already have that answer in a way. So it's about learning about each other, and making sure that everyone can be put in the right place to be most effective. And if we have to all learn a new skill, then that's what we do. We learn a new skill, and we, teach each other. And we're not just educating our clients. We have to educate ourselves so that we can educate our clients and or vendors too. Especially, for some hospitals that we have, they're doing psychiatric wards. So we can't make the same gown with a cord that goes around the waist to tie, because that can be used as a weapon in a way, for certain types of patients. So we have to think about utilizing Velcro or other ways of doing it. And so it becomes a nice, mind practice.
Sure. So what communication tools do you rely on heavily for your organization? So think about software, think about, physical devices, anything like that. But what have you found as kind of your, let's say, your top three? What are your top three, you go to these means of communication that maybe some of us might not even consider or think about?
Well, I think, we're all using same software, things of that nature, whether it's the WhatsApps and the WeChats and the things of that nature. But I think what's really key is having that conversation, having an agenda, whether it's written down to each other or just in your mind, so that you can really, hit your points that you need to hit, but also let the conversation flow organically. So in terms of my style, in terms of communication, I'm a listener. I like to listen to hear what the clients have to say. I like to hear what the vendors have to say and not be afraid to ask questions. Some things I do not know, like I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. So, some of these things I can kind of pick up on a general surface level, but not being afraid to ask questions, especially as an entrepreneur. There are things you're coming into that you don't know. As an entrepreneur, you have to learn and do maybe everything, in the beginning, because whether it's finance, operations, sales, because you don't have the capital to bring someone else on board to help you out with certain things. So for me, that's the way I like to go about it in terms of being able to, be open and understand that I don't know everything. As much as I would like to think I do not.
Understood. All right. So that was another flyer answer. That was the attorney taking over for that. I think I have to, in order to apply these questions to you as an attorney would understand them, I'm going to have to say asterisk is don't give me an attorney answer on this. But I'm curious what your actual tools, and again, I will help you ahead of this and help you on this answer to say your tools that you use work for you, but there's other tools that work for everybody else. That way you don't even have to say that now in your answer. I've added that little asterisk already for you. But what are like the top 3 tools that you, for your organization, have found to be helpful for you personally?
In terms of technical tools or just like
software,
strategy
hardware,
okay.
What tools, like physical or software related tools, virtual tools, have you found to be successful for you?
So definitely WeChat has been successful for us, right? Because I'm a big WhatsApp user with my friends and other people, but a lot of the vendors we're using overseas, they're not so much using WhatsApp, or there might be restrictions, for them to use it. So with that, then I moved over to WeChat on that aspect, and have been able to work and use it, very efficiently and such. So WeChat is one. Another one is Dropbox. I like to have video conversations. Sometimes we record them, but also for our clients, we like to do production videos as well in regards so that they can see the actual products being made. Having that deeper line as well, I think becomes a nice factor. So I take Dropbox, so large files, coming onto my phone that I can't use my phone if I can't move it off to somewhere else, and become nice and organized as well. But even things like Asana, in terms of being able to, in Slack, in terms of communication within the team, but Asana in terms of task scheduling, keep myself in line. We're so mobile all the time. I still like to use paper and pen, but I have 15 different notebooks, and I'm like, okay, let me organize myself, and so things like that help me with the organizational process as well. I think that's, been such great inventions lately in terms of technology for entrepreneurs, and being able to even just do video calls through WeChat or WhatsApp or all the others as well. So those are, I think, the top 3 for me. Dropbox has been really good. The WeChat, and then also, of course, the website. And I'll say we use Shopify on our side, and it's been an easy tool to allow us to make changes as we need and such. So it's been those are our top 3.
Okay, that's 5. Great. I appreciate that. That's what I was curious about to see, because I like to have our guests like yourself who are successful share some of the tips that sometimes others might go, oh, I've never heard of WeChat, or, oh, I've never heard of Slack, and they're maybe new to this venture, or they're new to the looking into tools, and they're like, oh my gosh, there's so many of them. I don't even know where to begin. So even just kind of giving that little morsel out there to say, hey, it might be something for you to look into. May not work for you. I know of some that go from let's say Asana for project management that use Trello instead. So there's lots of different platforms out there. You got to find the one certainly that works for you and the way your organization is structured. because you got to remember, and I think a lot of people forget about this when it comes to software, is the goal of the software company, sure, yes, it's to solve a problem, but the way they survive is they have to kind of cater to the masses, the general group. So they have to make and add features that maybe don't apply to you in your business, or maybe they don't have features that your business really needs. So do your homework, go out there, look for stuff that works for you, try a few things. A lot of these softwares have trials that you can try out for a little while, see if it works, and then you can commit or not commit. But I appreciate you sharing those, because I think it's important to share that information with, especially what we consider kind of newbie entrepreneurs that are just kind of starting off and getting their feet wet. So
Right. No, and I appreciate you drawing it out too in
yeah,
terms of that, actually getting the tools,
I do my
the
best. I will
specifics.
always draw it out. So you have no fear. I will do that every single time. All right, let's shift over
Nice.
to a little bit more of a serious topic. So no doubt the products that you're dealing with right now are very, in a lot of ways, they're sensitive because of what they're related to, which is the pandemic,
Right.
which is COVID. Right
Right.
now, it's serving the need that we all have to protect ourselves, protect our family, protect coworkers, everyone around us. As it said in the very beginning, we're all in this together, which is true. This is a global thing. This is not just impacting U.S., not just impacting another country. This is all of us are in this together. So with products that I'm sure that are constantly reminding not only you, but also the rest of your team of how serious this is out there. When someone's doing the stitching for medical gowns, or they're, putting the elastic band in face mask and things like that, I'm sure it hits them. And it's not, we're still, as I mentioned at the very opening of this, we're still quite a ways away from being out of the thick of it. And I know all of us want to be out of it sooner rather than later, of course, for
Right.
multiple reasons. But what I'm getting at is it's a kind of, in some ways, it's a bit of a depressing, environment that you guys are having to produce products for to combat. So your products themselves are not depressing, but what you're trying to help protect from and save from is a
Correct.
depressing means. And
Yeah.
so, how do you go about, as the leader of your team, in really making sure that morale is always up there, that they're not getting swept up into the, just like, man, I keep hearing the news and they're just rising of cases and deaths, and I know of someone that, friend, their sister or brother died recently. How do you
Yeah.
help? Because I know this is a big component that we're all, some of us are figuring it out sooner rather than later. Like, whoa, I didn't realize we really need to be on the mental health positive side of things for our own family, for our
Right.
team. How do you go about doing that and delivering that as a leader?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a tough thing, and a great point because so in terms of how we go about it, we have conversations with each other, right? In terms of we do watch the news, we do look at what's going on. We're obviously in it. We
Sure.
hear from our clients
Yeah.
as well, um, and it's about having that ability to step away as well.
Mm,
Don't be on 24/7. Take a walk. Take a couple of days off. It's the holiday
yeah.
season. We could. There's always work to do, but no, make sure you take some time off, recalibrate. Refresh yourselves, and understand the work that we are doing, as you mentioned, is good work to help combat this sort of stuff. And also at the same time understanding that the products that we're producing is not, they're not new products.
Hmm.
It's just more of it that people are using in this specific case, because even after the pandemic is done, hospitals still are using PPE on a daily basis for the regular different surgeries and things of that nature that we
Sure.
go through. But in terms of the mental health aspect, it's definitely something, even myself, it's just being able to step away. I like to be on all the time, and people around me, close to me, they tell me, take a step back, relax, literally go walk around the
Yeah.
house, go walk around the block. And it's I always like to say, like, you know, I like to get it done and then I can relax, but
Sure.
then there's always something that comes up.
Yes.
So, you watch yourself on saying something like that. So that's what we kind of like, employ with the team and try to do certain things. Obviously, we can't get together as much as maybe we could before, in terms of, physically having like an outing with the team, things of that nature. But just think, having conversations that have nothing to do with business and
Yes.
work as well really helps that set that tone, even on our vendor side too, getting to know each other, but also, relaxing about, the situation that we're all in and facing. So
I
it's,
agree with you.
it's
I mean,
nice.
it's definitely something that you have to be intentional with. And you also, I think another part of it that oftentimes is not talked about is you have to be self aware. And in that even
Big.
means too that you may realize pretty well that, hey, okay, like you said, hey, I realize that, I'm just kind of the type that's just going to hunker down and plow through it. But I also realize there's always going to be something else to work on. So there's no way
Right,
I can work 24/7 and not have it impact me from a mental state or physical state or any of that kind of stuff. And we all know that.
right,
So even
right.
being intentional with what I reference as kind of putting tripwires in intentionally
Mm,
in front of you that will kind of
that's a good one.
jolt you back a little bit where it's like, oh
Yeah,
yeah, I got to stand up. It's been 2 hours since
yeah,
I've sat
right,
here and I didn't even realize 2 hours has gone by like
right.
that. And especially now more than ever, there's so many people that have not had, in some cases, the privilege or the opportunity, the benefit of working from home. And they're having to
Hmm.
learn all of these things for the first time because it's like a
Right,
whole nother world for them. They're used to working
right.
at the office, separating as soon as they walk out that door, get in their car, boom, they're done with work and they're
Hmm.
driving home and they walk in the door and it's a separation. Well, how do you separate
Right,
when your office is the very same spot that you sit and watch
right,
TV at night? It's like, how do you
right.
disconnect?
Exactly.
So you've got to be
Yeah,
intentional with realizing what's going on before it becomes that problem and say, okay,
right.
I know I'm the type that if I don't put something to remind me to stand up every hour, I'll sit there practically all day unless I have to use the restroom and grab a bite to eat,
Right,
which is still not enough. So
right,
being
right.
intentional with your time, I think, is a vital aspect of that, and that's a great point in sharing because you're right. It's not just going, oh, if something comes up and being reactive to it, we'll get around to it and we'll solve it. By that point, it's usually very behind the curve and it's a little too
Right,
late. So,
right, right.
all right, let's
Yeah, I
do
like how you put it, the intentional tripwires. I like that.
exactly. And it's just
But
something that you have to kind of, it's almost like putting a booby trap out there for yourself where you're like,
yeah,
hey, I know myself to know that while I'm in this mode, I'm not going to pay attention to this. And so I'm going to
right,
put something that forces me to trip because then it's going to
right,
be like, oh, wait, what happened? What's going on? And then it's like, oh
right,
yeah, that's right.
right,
I got to do something different right now.
right,
And so you're intentionally
right.
doing that for yourself. But all right, so Legrand, you have an interesting resume that is fascinating. We talked about you being an attorney, going that route, and then it changed for you. You had this
Yeah.
draw to the textile industry, and you made that transition over. No doubt, probably your parents weren't so thrilled about that one, and said, as you communicated before, that story about talking to someone saying, "Oh, your parents must be so proud that you're an attorney," and you're like, "No, they wanted me to also be a doctor and." The congressman and the president and everything else. So they were disappointed. Now you're going in their mind probably backwards, where you're going, oh, at
Right,
least you were an
right,
attorney.
right,
No, 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 no. What?
right,
Go back to being an attorney.
right, right,
But
right.
your first job was as and in the corporate real estate world. Tell us just a little bit about that. I'm curious. We haven't touched on that really at all, and so I'm curious for you to share that with us.
Yeah, so in terms of becoming an attorney, really, when my parents came here, they bought, real estate in Boston and such. Though my dad was a teacher, and so they always had the mindset of having like a stable job, but also having your own thing because you could never
Mm,
know what would happen afterwards, right? And so on that, actually doing the entrepreneurial side for myself, it was like, oh, you're just repeating what your dad used to do or so. So it wasn't as bad. And having that, attorney background, legal background, business background, that I could go back into corporate America, if I needed to, and understanding, what I learned in corporate America has been like a benefit as well in corporate law. Like you mentioned, now that on the legal side of it, this is really the reason why I went to law school. Not that I really wanted to be a lawyer, no. I actually just wanted to understand what lawyers knew so that when I had my own businesses, that I could say to my lawyers, I know what you're talking about as well, because for me, actually, my father passed away when I was very young.
Okay.
And so my mother had to take care of like the real estate. And so I remember her going through issues, even with her own lawyers, doing some things in Boston. Think about it. She's a black woman. She is, from another country with an accent. So people thinking that she has a lot of money because she has properties, people trying to take advantage. So I would see those things as a kid, even we were going to court with tenants and things of that nature with her. And that's what I wanted to dispel, because I know people, we like to judge a book by its cover,
Sure.
right? So at my age of whatever it was, like 21 or so, before I went to law school, I said, okay, I want to show people that I'm a lawyer or an MBA, and I'm going to put that in my signature so that when I have a conversation with these people, they're automatically going to give me respect, because they see what the educational background is from, right? And from there, then like maybe I'll have less trouble, And so I did, go to law school and had an opportunity to work for a great law firm after law school, and work for the Attorney General's office and another law firm as well, to learn some different variations of like finance, securities, corporate real estate law, and, allowed me to buy my own properties as well, things of that nature. And gives me this opportunity to understand, various different things. And like you're talking about before, how I answer my questions, it's about different angles.
Sure.
Going to law schools, I think of law school as a mental boot camp. I think I'm able to think fast. I'm able to, have a good conversation, or to see things from different angles, to problem solve, so that I can make sure that, you might see this, but watch out for that Mack truck coming over here.
Yeah.
I think for me, like in terms of my family and such, it's like, I think it's in our nature to kind of be in this, entrepreneurial realm, hearing stories like, my uncles telling us of like my grandfather and how our family was in Haiti, this, that, and the other, inspired me. I think it was already naturally in me, but it allowed me to say, okay, I can do this too. And I have people I can talk to about it. Might not be the same, field that they're in before in terms of their entrepreneurial like aspects, but it allows them to, have a conversation. And that's why I love talking to other entrepreneurs as well, because you hear certain things that we all go through,
Sure.
Which becomes very important to understand.
Gosh, that is an amazing story. That you articulated that beautifully, because very few, that's a lot to pack into an answer in such a short and concise way, and still have it drive home the point. Because just to kind of highlight a couple points, and there were plenty of them, is your battle, or your family's battle rather, with the stereotypes that, just from a visual or accent wise, that, and then also that too of people assuming you have money because you have these properties and that you're just rolling in it, kind of thing. To then also have the foresight to say, okay, I've seen what my mom's gone through, and maybe even parts of seeing what your dad went through, remembering back when he was around, that what they've gone through, so much so that you're like, look, most people are chasing or going after, they've got a goal in mind, a dream in mind, for purposes of, certainly not repeating the past in some cases, and that's what you've done. But it was even from the level of, say, I'm going to use almost getting, basically a doctorate of education, so that people don't treat me horribly right off the bat. And then also too, I'm just for kicks and giggles going to become an attorney because that way I know I'm probably going to need it at some point for, down the road. That's like saying, hey, I'm just going to go and get a medical doctorate because I'm sure I'm going to have kids someday. And, I want to figure out how to lower the cost of going to the doctor's office. I'll treat them at home. It's like homeschooling, but for the medical world. I mean, I would have never imagined you saying that, yeah, I decided to become an attorney right off the bat. Just, I knew I was going to go into business. So I'm like, I just need to know what the attorneys are talking about. So let me just blow through not only an expensive learning situation, but also the time that goes into that investment. That's a tremendous reason that I would not have ever for a million years guessed the reason that you pursued. I mean, certainly, all joking aside, there are other aspects of it that tie you and bond with the real estate and legal world. Your parents certainly having properties, you saw what they went through. And so having also probably deep down is saying, okay, if my mom continues to have these properties well after I've graduated, well after I've gotten, past the bar and I'm now officially a lawyer, I can help her out too. So there's part of that as well, of course. But just I would have never guessed that part of that answer was, I figured I was become a business owner at some point. So let's get that out of the way. Let's just get some legal experience in there. So
that's one of the things they used to always say, like, knowledge is power. That's one thing people can't take away from you. And so I took it to heart and I, wanted to get out of the way as soon as possible.
Well, Legrand, it has been our pleasure to have you here on Ignite Your Business Radio Show. We can't tell you how inspirational your journey has been. And we thank you for your hard work, especially the fight against COVID. And truly against all germs. We applaud you for being a model to anyone looking to, reinvent not only an industry, but also your own business in some ways. And your passion too, being your own boss and going out and doing the hard work that it takes to become a small business owner. But before we go, I do have a couple of burning questions for you. So these are some interesting ones. I'm curious, and I will preface because I've learned from the previous 2 times I've asked this question or type of question to say this is specifically for you. And yes, everybody else can have their own New Year's resolutions, and that it might cross their path too. But I'm just asking Legrand Lindor what his top New Year's resolution is and what tripwires, as we called it, that you put in place to help you make that a success for this year.
For me, it's to be literally more efficient with my time. I'm like that basketball player that can score a lot of points, but I'm a volume shooter. I need to get a lot of it out there. So really being efficient with my time so that I can spend more time with family and friends and doing those certain things that we are here on this earth to enjoy as much as possible. There's obviously bumps in the road. But I think for me, how I need to do that is being more efficient with my time and understanding that I can't get it all done in one day, like you're talking about 24/7. So that's why I'm really taking to heart what you said in terms of the tripwires, because that's literally what I have to do. And I told myself that I have to really be intentional about that so that I can, enjoy my time while I'm here, sort of thing.
Well, and the purpose really of this show is to serve in some capacity as that very tripwire. It's to remind business owners of the things that you quickly forget about. In studying and kind of thinking about it for our own purpose for 2021, for our company as a father, a husband, all these different roles that we as men even fulfill. That I looked at it from previous years ago. Okay, why do people normally fail at their New Year's resolutions? And I think there's a couple different components that, as I've really looked at it and really broken it down, it comes down to essentially kind of 3 points. One is that people fail almost immediately because they say, okay, I'm going to lose weight. Well, okay, be more specific. How much weight are you going to lose? And to add to that, the kind of 2.0 version of that is, when are you going to plan on having that weight loss be done by? So it's not just setting a goal to say, okay, I'm going to read more books. Okay, well, how many more books are you going to read, and how many books are you going to read by a certain date? So that's the first part, is really establishing what your true goal is, along with a completion date. The second, and I think where really is missed the most, is to say, okay, now that I've established what my goal is with the end dates in mind, now I need to work it backwards. What do I need to do on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, semi-annually basis to hit the milestones in order to accomplish that very goal? And it could be something as small as saying, hey, I'm going to go on a walk every single day. Well, or lose weight, which is the most common one for a lot of people. And they say, okay, I'm going to sign up for the gym. Well, yeah, that's great, but you instantly jump in, you fizzle out because it's not part of your repetition, and you lose focus, you lose drive. I think the third component to this is that you have to, along your journey and along your path to get to where you're trying to go, is that you are doing a debrief regularly to say what's working, what's not working, and doing the course corrections along the path. So I know you have to go, so I just wanted to point that out. But I'm not sure how you do it, how you get the sleep, and you've got a million things going on. So one more point I wanted to point out to you is, or question rather, is who's your inspiration? Who inspires you?
Honestly, my mother inspired me in terms of what she was able to accomplish, on her time here on the earth, and my father as well, my parents, and and literally entrepreneurs, as well, like friends that I have, just seeing what people are able to do with the short amount of time that they have during the day and other things that they have to accomplish. So I would start there, obviously, with my parents.
All right. So where, we've got COVID. Hopefully, we're all hoping from a health standpoint ends quicker rather than later. But what do you see as the future for, and what do you hope and you're planning on the future for LMI Textiles?
Yeah, so honestly, with COVID, the business with the PPE garment supplies, been, big, for the past like 10 months. But since we have such great expertise in like our cut and sew manufacturing out of Haiti, that's really our next play, or expanding that play. Because there's a lot of various factors with that being close to shore to the U.S. to our customers.
Sure.
So lead times can be a lot less. The costs, because we have certain legislation with the U.S. as well, things can come in duty free. Because of that, trade zones and such, so we'll have the PPE, but we're expanding upon like the things that are, medical scrubs, uniforms, for corporate or whatever, it might be. So that whole manufacturing side is what's going to really go big for us.
Okay.
Again, because not only are we direct to, the end users, let's say hospitals in this case, but, we manufacture for some suppliers as well.
Sure.
So it's about, hitting it from a lot of different angles. On our side, and having a different integration, vertical and horizontal. So that's where we're envisioning ourselves really catapulting, especially now that we've gotten more clients or more direct contacts with procurement teams in hospitals, that not only can we provide the PPE, but we can provide other things. And because we have such a large sourcing team abroad, there's other things that we're going to be getting into, and we already have, whether it's like trash lines, little
Sure.
things that you never think would make money, but people, buy in bulk and things of that nature, hospital systems, because we have such a great sourcing team, abroad, we can get anything. Like I said, we're doing needles and syringes now that are FDA 510K approved, because we know there's going to be a shortage, just like there were for gloves and 95 3M masks, things of that nature. So it's about trying to stay ahead of the curve in that way, but also having our core business that will allow us to like hit what we need to hit.
Absolutely. Well, all right, Legrand, I can't thank you enough. So to learn more about the work that Legrand Lindor is doing, visit igniteradioshow.com and look for this very episode. There you can find a recording of this episode as well as any information you may need to get in touch with him. And I truly hope the information that Legrand from LMI Textiles shared today not only helped light the fuse inside of you, but ends up taking your business to the next level. I'd like to thank our guest today, our production team, our engineering team, and most of all of you listening. Until next week, I'm your host, Josh Wilhelm. Have a great and successful rest of the week, everybody.